Hi, everyone. I'm Thérèse, and this is New York Girl Again, The After, the podcast for caregivers who survived the hardest chapter of their lives and are now gathering both the courage and the strength to write the next one. I'm so grateful you're here. We continue to honor National Family Caregivers Month with our series, The Month of the Unsung Heart. In last week's episode, The After Still Deserves Honor, we talked about what it means to be seen in the deafening quiet that follows caregiving, to honor not only the love you gave, but the strength that helped you endure it. And this week, we take the next step forward, because once you've honored where you've been, you can finally begin to rediscover who you are. This week's theme is The After Begins with You, because healing isn't only about what you let go of. It's about what you allow back in: peace, joy, self-worth, and purpose. You mattered before caregiving. You matter after. And today, we're going to talk about finding your way back home, to yourself. Do you remember who you were or what you dreamed of before caregiving began? After my dad died and that final leg of my caregiving journey ended, I realized how hard it was to remember. Caregiving had defined so much of my adult life that I didn't quite know where I ended and the role began. When you've been a caregiver long enough, you start to disappear in the service of someone else's needs. Your days become lists, fine-tuned routines, appointments, and constant adjustments. Your identity becomes centered around a role, a demanding, heart-wrenching role that consumes your every thought. And your worth becomes measured in outcomes. Did they eat, rest, breathe, survive today? And when it's over, you wake up one morning and realize you barely recognize the person in the mirror. You see a face that's aged, etched with lines of worry, a body that carries the evidence of stress and sleepless nights, eyes that look sad from having seen too much. But beneath all that, there's still someone waiting to be remembered. You were someone before this: a dreamer, a runner, a dancer, an entrepreneur, a friend, a daughter, a son, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother. And that person isn't gone. They've just been standing quietly behind the blackout drapes, waiting for permission to step back into the light. Rediscovery doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, often messy, sometimes filled with trial and error. But it begins with the smallest acts of self-recognition. A morning walk alone with your thoughts, without guilt. Buying flowers just for you. Or whispering your own name with tenderness, as if to say, I remember you. Because the after begins the moment you realize you're allowed to exist beyond the caregiving role, beyond someone else's story. You start to remember that your life still belongs to you. And from that remembering comes something even deeper: the slow, steady rebuilding of self-worth. Because after years of measuring your value by how well you cared for others, the greatest act of healing is learning to care for yourself with that same devotion. And that's where we're headed next. You know, for so many caregivers, self-worth becomes something that quietly slips away over time. Doesn't happen overnight. It happens in 1,000 small moments of putting yourself second, of saying, I'll rest later, of convincing yourself your needs can wait because someone else's can't. As both a caregiver and a nurse in the behavioral health field, I've seen and experienced what happens when people give for too long without replenishing. The brain starts to equate self-care with selfishness. The nervous system becomes addicted to urgency. And even when peace finally arrives, it feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. But neuroscience tells a different story. When you start to do things that bring you even a small spark of joy, listening to music you love, dancing in your kitchen, laughing with friends, enjoying a lovely dinner in a restaurant, your brain begins to release dopamine and serotonin again. And those are the same feel-good chemicals that once surged when you were caring for someone else. Only now, they're lighting up for you. It's not indulgence. It's neuro repair. It's healing. You're teaching your nervous system that it is okay to experience joy, that calm is allowed, that you are worthy of good things, not because you earn them through sacrifice, but because you simply exist. And that's what reclaiming self-worth really is. It's not a mindset. It's a rewiring. So if peace feels strange, if you feel restless or even guilty for resting, remember, it's just your nervous system catching up to your new life. Give it time. Give it grace. Give it you. Because when the noise finally fades and your nervous system begins to settle, something extraordinary starts to happen. You begin to notice the quiet, not as emptiness, but as possibility. The same energy that once cared for someone else starts to stir inside you again. This time, asking different questions. What do I love? What makes me come alive? What do I want to create with all this strength I've earned? That's when you realize the after isn't just about recovery. It's about rediscovery. It's not just surviving what ended. It's becoming something new. And that's what we'll explore next, the rebirth of purpose. You know, one of the most confusing parts of life after caregiving is that the quiet feels so unfamiliar, and for me, frightening. When your purpose has always been tied to someone else's well-being, the silence can feel like something's missing, like you're underperforming, like a void. But maybe that silence isn't emptiness at all. Maybe it's an invitation to a new chapter. Because purpose doesn't always roar back into your life. Sometimes it starts as a whisper, a small nudge to move your body again, a moment of curiosity that makes you want to learn something new, a spark of joy that reminds you you're still here. Honestly, purpose after caregiving doesn't have to look anything like what came before. If you can even remember the before. It doesn't have to be grand or world-changing. It just has to be for you. Maybe purpose now looks like nurturing your own health and regaining your own strength. Maybe it's rescuing an animal, volunteering somewhere in your community once a week, starting a healthy garden, or writing the story that's been living in your heart. Maybe it's simply waking up each day and saying, today, I'm choosing me. That's what rebirth looks like, when your energy, your care, your empathy begin to flow back toward your own life. You start to notice that the same qualities that made you a remarkable caregiver, your attentiveness, your strength, your ability to love unconditionally, are now guiding you toward new creation. Because your purpose didn't die when caregiving ended. It just needed time to evolve. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it again. Not as a demand, but as a calling. To live, to create, to love again. This time, without losing yourself. Purpose after caregiving is not about going back to who you were. It's about rising again. It's about rediscovery. It's about becoming the best version of you for this next chapter. If you're a caregiver living in the after, take a deep breath with me right now. Let your shoulders drop. Place a hand over your heart and whisper these words softly, not as a mantra, but as a promise to yourself. I am still here. I am still becoming. The after begins with me. Because this is your turning point, the moment when you stop being defined by what you've lost and begin to be defined by what you're ready to live for. Healing isn't a return, it's an arrival. And you, my friend, are finally arriving home to you. You've spent so many years being someone else's heartbeat, the steady rhythm that kept love alive through the hardest of days. Last week, we talked about honoring that sacred strength, the part of you that carried so much and somehow still kept going. But this week, we've taken one step closer to rediscovery. Because the after doesn't just deserve honor. It deserves you, your laughter, your dreams, your new beginnings. The after begins the moment you decide to stop living in the shadow of what ended and start living in the light of what's still possible. You mattered before caregiving. You matter after. So this week, give yourself permission to do one small thing just for you. Something that makes you feel alive again. Even if it's as simple as taking a walk, lighting a candle, or playing a song that reminds you who you are. Because every act of self-kindness is a declaration. I am still here. I'm Thérèse, and this is New York Girl Again, the after. If this episode spoke to your heart, please share it with someone who's still learning that their after begins with them too. Follow us at New York Girl Again on Facebook and Instagram for loving reflections from the month of the Unsung Heart. And join our growing community at newyorkgirlagain.com, where you can also find resources on reconnecting with yourself in this season of rediscovery. Because caregiving may have changed you, but it didn't end you. It simply prepared you for everything that comes next.